How will this look differently for the New York Knicks with Tom Thibodeau gone and Mike Brown in?
Yeah, I would expect consistent nine-man rotation, like an expanded rotation, and I would expect greater minutes distribution, maybe fewer minutes from the starters. And look, I know that there's a loud chorus of people who always felt that Tom Thibodeau played his starters too long, didn't play the bench enough. I think in a way, the results were fantastic for Tom Thibodeau. But if that's your quibble with Tom Thibodeau, I think you're going to get to see a different approach here under Mike Brown. In terms of the offense might look different, defense might look different. I think we're still waiting to hear on who Mike Brown brings in for his, quote-unquote offensive coordinator position, the associate head coach, and the defensive coordinator position, to borrow a term from football. I know Brandon O'Connor from the Clippers have been a candidate for the Knicks. I'm not sure where they are with that, but I think it's a little bit early to talk about, stylistically how things might be different. But I do think minutes distribution, consistent rotation, I think that should look a little different than it did during the Tom Thibodeau era.
Well, the reason I brought that was not just because of the minutes police. Everybody was a member of either you were the minutes police or the minutes defense, right? Like our buddy Frank Isola, who loved Tibbs and was Tibbs' defense attorney for all those things. I wonder because Mike Brown went from being the guy who was the defensive guy, and he wound up taking, not the sabbatical, wound up having a couple of jobs, a cup of coffee with the Lakers, cup of coffee with the Cavs back before LeBron came back the second time, and then went to Golden State. And after spending a few years with Steve Kerr, he went to Sacramento and had, 2 really good years of offense, building around a team of guys who aren't necessarily shooters. Domantas Sabonis, not a shooter and operated the ball a lot. De'Aaron Fox, before everything went haywire there, not a strong three-point shooter, but yet and still that offense was humming at a league record rate of speed and efficiency. Do you see any parallels that you can make, or are there two totally different types of teams of personnel?
One of the few things that Mike Brown did commit to during his introductory press conference was he said he wants to play fast. And so I think you can deduce from that the pace is going to be up. I'm sure the Knicks are going to want to attack in transition as much as possible. Not that they didn't do that under Tom Thibodeau, but I think the pace will be a little bit faster. And maybe that also is kind of married to the idea of a more even distribution of minutes, maybe fewer minutes from the starters. Maybe it all kind of fits together. And the thing that I would say is, obviously the Kings had great success under Brown, but you know this, Mr. Goodwill, as well as I do. This is a different beast that he's stepping into here. It's almost unfair to him, but it is NBA Finals or you didn't meet expectations because of how this has played out with Tom Thibodeau. Reaching the conference finals for the first time in 25 years. The Knicks reaching the conference finals for the first time in 25 years under Tom Thibodeau. Decision was made to let him go. You bring in Mike Brown. Now Brown, fairly or unfairly, the way he's going to be measured in year one is very high. The expectations are very high. So that to me is an interesting element here.
When I think of coaches, and I'm going back into the Wayback Machine of coaches who are successful coaches walking into win-now situations in year one, right? Not even Steve Kerr was walking into a win-now situation. Like a lot of us were looking back in 2014 and saying, I mean, you won 50 games with Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson. Like, what do you expect to do? And they wound up winning 67 games that year and winning the NBA title, but nobody saw that coming. Like Larry Brown walked into a win-now situation. Pat Riley, when he replaced Stan Van Gundy the next year, walked into a win-now situation. But once again, more experienced coaches with championship stripes, not that Mike Brown does not. But going back to Mike Brown and it being in New York City, how do you think he's going to handle, not that you guys are a unforgiving media market, but it is a pressure-packed media market. How do you think he's going to handle that? Maybe compared to Tibbs, who kept a lot of people at arm's length and was gruff on his exterior and everything else. And that seemed to kind of work, especially with, Leon Rose not speaking out in public. I call Leon Rose the groundhog, Punxsutawney Phil, even though Punxsutawney Phil has come out way more times to talk to the public than Leon Rose has. How do you think that Mike Brown will handle being the spokesperson for everything New York Knicks, especially this season?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the people that they interviewed, and I think that among that group, Mike Brown was the best equipped candidate to handle the media, but also to coach the team in general. I know that, Jason Kidd was on their wish list. They had pie in the sky thoughts about Ime Udoka, Chris Finch. But the group that was available to them, I think Brown was the best candidate for dealing with the media and from a basketball stance, just because his experience, right? He's been in this league for so long. He's not going to see anything, hear anything from us or a reaction from the fan base that he hasn't seen or heard already in other spots. It'll just be magnified, maybe. It'll be a little bit more intense because of the volume here, the expectations, the number of fans, the number of media. It's always a little bit louder, but I don't think that he's going to have any trouble at all with dealing with the media, dealing with the expectations, dealing with the fan base. I mean, look, you lose 3 in a row this year. I think people are going to start to grumble. But I think he's been through enough to where between himself and that locker room, it's not a hard locker room to coach. These guys are self-motivated. It's a good group. They'll be able to navigate, I think, bumps in the road as you go through this first season under Mike Brown.
It's fine. I want to talk about the players, but I want to get this point out for people who've never taken in a game at Madison Square Garden, and most people listening to this podcast may not have, right? For my 40th birthday, or not, it wasn't my 40th birthday, it was one of my friends' 40th birthday. I took a couple days off. We flew to New York City, and we just did all the New York things, and we wound up getting tickets to a Knicks Raptors game. Like Julius Randle was still on the team. He hadn't gotten hurt yet and everything else. And my friends who had never been to Madison Square Garden, they came up to me after the game and was like, yo, is it like this every game? This is December, and it feels like a playoff game. Like the fans are on their feet in the second quarter because they think it is a crucial possession. Can you convey to people how different it is at Madison Square Garden? Not for a playoff game, because everybody sees the playoffs and the intensity and everything else rises there. But just for a normal game, when you're on that 3-game losing streak and you're trying to turn it around and the expectations are there, what is that atmosphere like?
Yeah, I think the intensity and the, I want to use the right word here. I'll just say love for the team. It can go both ways.
That's a good word. That's a good word. That's a great word.
It can go both ways, man. Like the 3-game losing streaks during these seasons, especially when the Knicks were really bad. The fans got upset and they voiced their opinion. And I think J.J. Redick talks a lot about the kind of Northeast corridor, Philadelphia, Boston, New York, where, the crowd is loud and has strong opinions. And so you're going to hear your crowd, I think, turn negative, maybe a little bit more quickly than it does in other markets. But there's the flip side of that, where you're going to hear in mid-December in a second quarter of a nondescript game, an intensity from this crowd, a full-throated support from this crowd, because this is a town that has been waiting for a Knick team to have success like this one has for a long time. They sat through a lot of losing, a lot of embarrassment off the court, on the court, and now here they are with what looks to be a sustained winner here for a few years. And this city is certainly it gets its Knicks fever when the team's good, and so you're going to hear that in the building. You're going to hear the intensity in the building night in and night out. And honestly, you heard it in those 17 win seasons, those 23 win seasons. The crowd was still there every night. The building would fill up, and it's impressive to me. The credit to the fan out there and the passion that they bring to the team.